The following is intended for mature audiences. Viewer discretion is advised.
We made it, Dedites. Here we are, 1,000 subs. And as promised, here's the 1,000 sub special. Let's get it. Special has been a long time coming now. I bring you into the world of giant monsters, giant robots, and quirks. Story-wise, the events of Pacific Rim 1 and 2 happened. We're about 15 years after 2, so 25 years after 1 in total. Jake still pilots Gypsy, and his partner has changed, and age is getting to him, so he's probably on his way out. But for now, 3 guesses who his partner is. If you guessed All Might, you'd be right. Nate has embraced a life of teaching and the new generation, and Amara is the chief engineer, so yes, I know it was destroyed, but this is a V2, and subsequently a Mark 8. Speaking of which, I think this goes without saying, but there is no villain league in this instance. No heroes, no villains. Just humans trying to survive the wave of abominations that are being sent to annihilate them. This is an all hands on deck situation. If you're drift compatible, you're in a Jaeger Academy, whether you like it or not. Y'all might be wondering when Deku comes on deck. The answer is right now. Izuku Midoriya was born an only child as usual, but he made a good friend in one Miss Katsuki Bakugo. Izuku even had a quirk. A part of his quirk is molten hot plasma-like fire, and his eyes were reptilian, meaning he could see in the dark and slightly farther. The flames produced were stronger than Endeavor's by far, but per his parents, he was keeping it to himself. Like I said, as far as sight, his quirk was something akin to dark vision. Actually, it's exactly that. But still, that's pretty cool. And super strength. Also, his skin is slightly scaly. Izuku was literally born with this quirk. The fire breathing didn't start until he was at least 2 or 3, but short of his eyes, Izuku still looks human for the most part. It's just his skin clearly has patterned scales, and that he sheds every so often. His father disappeared when he was 3, so it's just been him and Inko for the last few years. He and Katsuki would have play dates every now and again, but they weren't in the same school. Katsuki was in a prep school a prep school, if you catch my drift. She had been tested drift compatible. As far as everyone knows, Izuku is not capable of doing so. Inko had paid a doctor to make false papers, so she didn't have to risk losing her baby. 3 more years go by, and Izuku has gotten used to his quirk. His scales are more pronounced, but he still looks human for the most part. He and Katsuki were walking home. His school is close to hers, so he just waits for her. They were chilling in the park for a bit when an attack went down. Obviously, they dipped for the nearest shelter. Izuku saw there was only room for 1 more person, and some dude was about to get in. Deku unceremoniously grabbed Katsuki and straight up yeeted her into the shelter, and down it went. Technology has come a long way since the first Pacific Rim, so these shelters are shielded. Kaiju are gonna have to work really hard to get in there. The dude that got denied entry saw Deku and pulled out a gun. Really, dude? You shot an 8-year-old boy. Too bad for you, I'm bulletproof. Deku took a deep breath and let loose on the guy. Dude ran as fast as he could to the nearby pond, but didn't make it. He was devoured by several small wolf-like kaiju. Deku was not sticking around for that. With focus of his strength, he leapt to the other end of the park in search of more shelters, but his app was showing nothing. Great. Mom's not gonna like this, but I'm gonna have to do it. Deku's eyes start to darken, and so does his scales, and the faint glow of his fire can be seen in his chest. But before anything more can happen, Category 3 could be seen in the distance, and a Jaeger was flung not quite in front of Deku, but close enough that one jump could get him there. Deku couldn't believe his eyes. Gypsy Avenger V2 fell victim to a mere Category 3. He shook it off. There was more to it. Gypsy didn't fail. The pilots did. Wait a minute. The pilots! All Might and Pentecost, son! Izuku ran at breakneck speed and got as close as he could to Gypsy. Deku could see that the cockpit was exposed. Pentecost was out and losing a lot of blood. All Might was slowly losing consciousness himself. Deku jumps into the cockpit, cauterizes Jake's wound, and puts him to the side. All Might sees Deku make his way to the control deck just as he loses consciousness. Gypsy stirs to life in the gaping hole in his chest. I think Gypsy's a he. Let me know in the comments and I'll correct it next time, but for now we're gonna go with he. And his chest closes and its optical sensors change colors as well. Izuku starts to grow a bit. So here's the kicker. These Jaegers are built with quirk boost technology. And I suppose I should get to the point and tell you what Deku's quirk is called. Kaiju King. I'll let you come to the proper conclusion on that one. Gypsy vaults to the Kaiju at a speed he hasn't shown in some time. Lightning is tossed at him, and he just shrugs it off. Good thing Gypsy adapted Izuku's scales. Izuku lets out 3 plasma bolts and knocks the Kaiju off center long enough for him to get closer and hit it with the blade before backing off. However, Deku got cocky and almost paid for it when a building is thrown his way. Deku takes a deep breath and you see his hand Gypsy's chest glow a dark bluish green, and the fire melts the entire building that was thrown at them. Jake had a fire quirk, but it wasn't that strong, even with the fire. That breath startled the Kaiju and also winded Izuku to a point, but he didn't have time to be winded. He had been fighting this thing for 15 or 20 minutes without aid or any negative side effects, but he was certain that he couldn't keep this up. He's only an 8-year-old after all. Luckily enough for him, he didn't have to. Little boy, let's show this bastard what for. This Kaiju shall know fear, for I am here. If you're capable of a solo drift, you should be able to make a neural handshake with me. Let's do this, young. All Might paused for a second for his name. Midoriya. Izuku Midoriya. That name. It couldn't be. The handshake is done, and oddly enough, they have 100% drift rate. Izuku was slightly winded and needed a break from being in control. Izuku, give me control. You have control! Gypsy regained his usual glow in the core as the strength of one for all coursed through him. Since Izuku was no longer the primary, Gypsy couldn't take the full benefit of his quirk, but its armor and optical drives were still slightly enhanced. That's how the quirk boost works. All Might bum rushed the kaiju and sliced its belly upwards and threw it as far as he could. Izuku, you have control! Hit it with the strongest fire blast you've got! Izuku focuses and grows even further to All Might's height, actually a little higher. He's slightly towering over him, and that growth was adapted into Gypsy's. Since he was the active pilot once more, the glow returned and Izuku shot a monstrous fireball at the kaiju. It exploded and singed kaiju guts were thrown across the park. Jake came to and noticed All Might with Deku, and that he was in control. He was slightly startled by his appearance, however, since in this damn near 8-foot tall form, remember y'all, All Might is roughly 7 feet tall, Deku grew over at least a head taller than that, and currently looked rather monstrous.
Are we done, All Might? I'm getting kinda tired.
Jake was startled at that voice. Even with the monstrous tone, he could tell it was a child. Yeah, son, we're done. That was the only big one. The ground forces can handle the rest. All Might sighed at what was to come. The cockpit had support cams in it, so Command knew exactly what just happened. This boy was now an asset of the PPDC, whether he wanted to be or not. Toshinori, I'm getting too old for this stocko. Look here, young blood. I can see your readings. It's clear you'll be his new partner. Age be damned. He hit a switch and Gypsy went dark. That'll buy us a few minutes. But they need to know what you can do, kid. There's no way you'll be granted a normal life now. So on the subject, what's your quirk? Izuku clams up a bit. Come now, young Midoriya. Tell us about your quirk. Jake's eyes went to the size of saucers at the name. Izuku shrank back down to his normal size, and Jake's eyes were now out of his head. Figuratively, of course. The name of my quirk is Kaiju King. I can get even bigger, too. Izuku hesitated, but Jake was right. The jig was up. 350 feet tall, to be precise. In that form, you know me as G0951774.
You're Godzilla?
They both shout out, and Izuku grins sheepishly. So Jake basically forcibly rebooted Gypsy's systems, so Command had got none of that. But it was only a matter of time before they did. Gypsy is recovered, and three of them debrief on the events. Hello there, honey. My name is Your Midnight. I assume you've called my mommy by now. Huh. Oh, you bet they got her, Izuku. Inko would spank the living daylights out of her son if she didn't know that what he did was unavoidable. Now, your mommy has signed all the paperwork for you, and the issue of her fraudulent paperwork shall be dismissed. We've legitimized both of your registrations. You heard that right. They were illegals in the inner town. Not anymore, though. She did that mostly to protect her son. Though, for the most part, she wanted him to have a life she never did. To the point where she works as an entertainer, if you catch my drift, and Izuku knows it. For the most part, he'd spend nights with the Bakugo family since they lived next door, and sometimes when that wasn't an option, he'd be napping in the employee area of the club. But I'm gonna say, yeah, he's seen his mom dance a few times. He's not that surprised. I mean, he's 8. He's taken baths with his mother, so he's used to seeing her. But trust me, he just wasn't left alone when he was, well, there at the club. I mean, the girls gave him so much attention. They doted on him. He was an adorable little boy, after all, and a good boy at that. You could be seen doing homework and studying, reading good books. Pretty much not a single comic could be seen, and the girls all loved that about it. But even with the fact that Izuku was now being paid, and handsomely at that, Inko had been instructed to keep her job to keep up appearances, but she would be moved to a classier joint. Izuku would be treated as a national secret. Like I said in the cockpit, I am too old for this, but I'm gonna train your boy well, ma'am. Don't you worry about that. He's got a good head on his shoulders, especially since he's no stranger to fighting Kaiju. Godzilla has been removed from the shoot on sight list, since he's not a real Kaiju. Jake's phone rings. Honey, hi.
Don't you honey me. Do you realize how much work I am going to have to do now?
And also various curses in Russian could be heard. Oh boy, Jake was not looking forward to that conversation. Amara was not happy at all. All the damage that Izuku's quirk had repaired was undone when he left the cockpit, and it was an utter mess. Still operable, but it would take a while to repair Gypsy.
Also, bring that cute little boy over sometime. My assistant and I would love to ask him about his quirk and how to better adapt to Gypsy to handle it.
3 guesses who Amara's assistant is. Jake picks up an immensely tired Deku in his base form. He's just a normal 8-year-old boy, so he didn't weigh that much. Izuku just enjoyed his little nap on the way to engineering. Inko followed them, insisting that she could carry her son without trouble. Jake's was a presence that demanded respect. Many of the people who saw Izuku on his back were wondering who the kid was, but if they were important enough, they'd know in time. Izuku was contentedly sleeping on Jake's back. He had a kid of his own at around that age, albeit they adopted, but still, he has a kid and he's used to it. As soon as they stepped into the engineering bay, they were accosted by Amara and May. Daddy, Daddy, is that the boy who... She looked around. Did the thing? Jake was smiling and nodded his head. May was utterly beaming and had so many questions for Deku, but noticed that he was just plumb tuckered out. All that activity, plus a solo fight for about 20 minutes in a Jaeger, had taken its toll on the poor boy's stamina. He wasn't getting up anytime soon. Amara looked at Jake with stern eyes. We'll have this conversation later. I don't want to wake the poor thing. He's earned his rest. Jake was sweating bullets. Follow me, Miss Inko, and we'll show you to your son's new home away from home. Inko followed Jake to see Toshinori setting up some personal touches a boy his age would like. He would be spending 5 days a week here after all. Izuku's cover was that he was an advanced student that would be fast laned into the pilot program as soon as he was a teenager. That was the facade, at least. By the time he would wake up the next day, he would officially be Toshinori's new partner. Deku had the best of the best teaching him, and on occasion he would have to deploy in his giant form known as Godzilla. The public was made aware that this wasn't an actual kaiju, but a man with a rather interesting quirk, and All Might's partner. Izuku would be in the hulkish state that nearly towered over All Might for, well, public appearances. And while they're just on standby in the Jaeger, he'd be wearing a helmet that obscured his face. In a slightly taller form than his own, but not quite the hulkish thing. But like I said, for public appearances, it was mostly the former. Katsuki managed to get into the elite middle school with Deku, but she had no idea he was the pilot of Gypsy. However, that is a tale for later. If you like this, let's get a United States smash on that like button. And if you're not subscribed, consider it. Hit that bell icon. Rest easy, Dedites. And remember, the night is ours.